All right, looks like we're getting set up here. Give it a second to load in. I would like to thank everyone from the Salesforce Ohana that's tuning in. Let's get over here and make sure we're looking at our tracker. Everything looks good. Final checks. Hold on. I'm not seeing it pop up on my end. I don't want to be. There we go. Cool. All right, so thanks everybody, whoever's tuning in or watching later. So we are going to be doing updates on this COVID-19 tracker that we have here in Salesforce. So for those that maybe have jumped to this video, there are two other videos where we set up the code to basically process or do a call out to a web service, get COVID-19 data and input it into a Salesforce object. So right now, what we plan on doing in this video is scheduling the data update or the data refresh, because right now it's on a manual data refresh. And then after that, I'll probably go over some best practices for writing JSON information and serializing, or I guess it's deserializing JSON information. So we'll get into that afterwards. I definitely want to make sure to set up the schedulable aspect of this first, and then we will see how far we get. So let's jump into things. Here we go. So if we look at our tracker, we see that it hasn't been refreshed in 13 days. And I'm going to refresh it here really quickly. But the one thing we'll notice is that none of the information actually changed. And that's because, like I said before, it is on a manual refresh. If we go to Postman and run Postman, which I think I just recently did, we can see that AK, which is Alaska, learned that last episode. Alaska is at 372 positive, and if we go to the Alaska in, I'm gonna have to search for it. Let's do it this way. Go to list view. We can see that the number that we have in Salesforce is not actually correct. So we want to make sure that this is updating. I'm gonna do this daily. Probably at the end of the day, just so that whenever I look at this again the next day, it's has the most up-to-date information. I don't know when. There are date modifieds on these, so if we think about it, these are actually being updated at a certain time. But for now, we will just go ahead and stick with using doing it at the night. One thing that could work is doing our sync after the data is updated inside of the web service call, but we can kind of, since we don't know when that happens, we are unable to update that. So let's jump into the code. So the first thing we want to do is create a new class to hold our Apex schedulable process or code in itself. So when we're looking at here, we're starting to get the very cumbersome code. It's only 40 lines or so, but it's starting to get very complicated, and we can break this code down to be more modular and reusable. So instead of creating our schedulable using the code to create our schedulable class here, I'm going to go ahead and update, create a new class so that we can have it be a little bit modular. So this class, I'm going to call it, this is literally the hardest part. We're going to call schedule call out nightly, because you can have multiple schedulable classes. Let's not put the nightly in there just in case we have it set it up for multiple times. Okay, so the next thing we need to do to make this schedulable is to implement schedule. So this is an implementation that will need to also add in some additional parameters, and we'll see that we're going to get an error in here, or some additional methods that we need to have since it is a schedulable, it implements schedulable. So for that, we're going to need to do public void execute And this takes in a schedule. You can see it down here. I wonder if we can click on it. System schedulable context. So we're going to take this. And normally it's called CTX. And I think if that should be enough, we may have to convert this to, no, we're good there. Okay, cool. So now basically what this does or did is said that we are allowed to execute the schedulable context. So if we actually look, let's go into start to kind of set this up before we even call our code. Now that we have that class created, we should be able to go to our Apex classes and then hit schedule Apex, search here, and we should see our schedule callout. So we can select this and select any of the different days and the times that we want this to run. So that's why I didn't want to say nightly, even though we're probably going to run this nightly. Because we can have multiple on there and have them sent out multiple times. Cool. So now, since we have our schedulable Apex, what we need to do is call our COVID, our call out here. So this is called the COVID call out. And the method call is the make current states call out. And that should be it. All right. So we'll save that and we'll see if we get any errors. We actually might because of an additional process, but now we're able to schedule this particular class in the Apex scheduler. So it's all set up in configuration. I'm going to refresh this one more time and just say nightly data refresh. That's what I'm going to call it. And the really cool thing about this is that we can add not just this COVID callout, we can add a bunch of other processes that we want to add in nightly in the scheduler. So the one thing to note, once we schedule this, we will not be able to schedule, or we will not be able to change this schedule callout class until we deactivate our schedule. And I'll show you what that looks like. And that's kind of why we separate them as well. So let's do this daily, and preferred time, let's do it at night. And I'm just gonna say, I don't even know if it'll let me do that far. It took it. All right, so now that is actually scheduled, which is great. And we can look at this in our jobs. I think it's Apex jobs, and we can see it here, a scheduled call out. And if we try to go back in here and add some comments, calls COVID API. All right, try to save that. Should give us an error. Apex class has batch or future pending in process. The scheduled job is pending. So basically, since this has something that's pending, we are not able to update it. But we should be able to go into our COVID call out and say, I don't know, calls COVID API, save. Oh no, it must be tied together. We may need to separate them out, and I can look into that. I don't know if it's just because we had this one on here, or because it's a direct call. I'll probably need to check on that. So we're gonna need to actually unschedule it if we're gonna make any more changes to this. That works out though. So let's figure out how we unschedule this by going to the schedule job. Let's go ahead and delete this here, because we do want to make some changes to that schedule job, and then or to this page, and then once we schedule the job, we will have it run nightly. But okay, we're gonna have to circle back to make sure to do that scheduler, or to schedule it before we sign off for today. Schedule call out. Let's open that up. I think this is good. We can test this out. How can we test this out? We're going to need to know how to execute the scheduler. And I don't remember how to do that off the top of my head. So let's see. Salesforce Apex scheduler test. All right, let's do Apex anonymous. Oh, I missed a Y in there somewhere. Nope, that's the like to execute the schedule in a developer console. Let's try this out. So this is actually scheduling it. I think I can execute it directly by calling this. Let's try that. So I'm doing our callout class. Let's just say .execute because this should just run it, you know? But we need the schedulable context, so that's what we're missing. We can pass in null. Let's try this out. So, I saw from this particular one that, here I'm just going to copy the whole thing, that we may need to give it a new, let's do that, and then let's say ctx.execute null. Let's just see what happens. What we're hoping happens here is that it will run our scheduled class like right away. You know, so it doesn't take any time. And this is basically just to check to see if our scheduled job is working or not. It looks like something happened there. This opened up. And then if we refresh our data, we're hoping to see new data come in through here. And I saw it got updated there before. It was like 335 or something like that. So this is when we schedule our class, it will, or it sounds like it's going to run properly. I'm going to need to check back in tomorrow to double check that. So that looks good all around. I will need to look into how to separate the different classes once they are scheduled fully, but I know there's a way to do it. I'm just not thinking of the right way on how to do it since this is called directly from here. Cool. So next up, what I want to do is probably clean up this deserialization, or I guess it's this deserialization in here, to a more scalable class deserialization. So what I mean by that is there's multiple ways to deserialize. I think I have, yeah, I got the documentation down here. So what we're currently using is an untyped deserialization, if I remember correctly here. And that just shoves everything through, and you'll have to do all of the casting and conversions yourself. You can do a deserialization into an apex type. So if you know the specific type of the value, you can deserialize it into there. And we're technically doing that here. We're passing in the class. This is a deserialization of a specific type. What I want to show now is I guess it's a strict deserialization where you're able to deserialize using a particular class that you create beforehand. So we're going to do something very similar to this where we create a class called car, or it's probably going to be COVID state. And what we're doing is we're going to create some sort of parser or some, we're going to deserialize it strict with the JSON information like this and pass in our actual class value for it to deserialize. So what this looks like is I'm going to start commenting out some of this stuff. And we're basically not starting from scratch. We're going to be able to reuse some of it, but can't reuse it all. See the return of the response at the end there. Cool. So outside of our original method here, let me bring this down and make sure I'm doing it right. Outside of our original method here, I'm going to do something like public class COVID state. And then I need to start defining how the variables that come through, or the values that come through Postman, what different variables they translate to. So for example, the state is going to be a string value because this has AK in here. Positive is going to be an integer value because it's numbers with no decimal place. So let's go ahead and start plinking away here. And we're if we can, we're going to try to use some of the top over here as an example because we can see what they are up top here. So the state value gets converted to a string and so on and so forth. String state public string. Oh well, I think we're on integer. Integer positive, and what I'm doing, I'm being very careful to name them after the actual value that we have in the as the key is what I'm trying to say here. The value that, so this is the key value, and this is the key value is being converted into that the property of the class itself. Let's just do a couple more to demonstrate, and then we'll go into a deeper part of this, which is like converting the entire thing pretty quickly. So we got public integer negative, and I think, you know, let's do a date too. Which dates are simple? No, we only did the one date, and that was really complicated. The rest of these are integers. Okay. Got a little tickle in my throat. So, couple things, since we're moving away from this harsh deserialization that we have in here, let's start adding back some of the elements that we need from our original code here. So we know we're going to need a list of states to go through. This deserialization is the main area where we're going to be changing. So let's just comment out all of that and see what that looks like. So now we should be able to do a deserialization, strict. And then we're taking in the JSON body, and now we're going to use our new class, which is COVID state.class. And then this is going to be a list of objects. So it's going to be a list of, pretty sure we can do it like this, COVID state class, or let's try that. Trying to save, everything actually saved there. I'm quite surprised, you know, it's always a gamble if it saves correctly the first time. Cool. Then let's start adding in some more stuff that we need. So we have, this is our list of COVID-19 objects. This is our existing COVID-19 states so that if we need to update, we can update them. This is our state map to do our filtering very quickly. This loops over the states. I'm going to say state results from API. And this is where we're going to have to start making some changes, because you can see here when we loop over some of this, I could probably take this out here. When we loop over these state objects, beforehand we were doing, we had to cast it to a key value pair and then do some more casting here. Now these state results are going to be COVID states, this class that we created down here. So if we, that's the object that we can use to loop over. Next up on the refactoring list is we don't have to convert this into a key value parent like this, since this is already a list of states. What else? This is getting the state name, right? And let's just test this out, because you know I don't like to move forward unless everything's gonna work. So what we're looking to do is get from our state object, since this is now an object, the temp state itself. What is this doing? Yeah, this is the entire object itself. So we don't need this anymore if it's looping over all of them. And then we should be able to just call something like this, since this is an object itself, temp state, and then we have state, right? And I think we can comment this out. So really what we did was, instead of doing deserialization on the on the level of the individual parameter, where we've deserialized them or converted all of those into the objects itself using this example from this public class. And we've converted it into a list already. Since we have our COVID objects, and this is a list of COVID objects here, we can just call that, since we're looping over them individual, we can call that object property individually. So let's make sure it works. Comment out these because we want to run it directly, and what we want to do is our call out, and what we're expecting to see is for this to print out the names of a bunch of states. So we have malformed JSON at the beginning of line 19. Line 19. Let me see where we get to. So we're getting close, and we're going to have to debug this a little bit. It did say line 19, right? So let's make sure that we are, and we don't need this anymore. Let's take a look at our JSON body, which it should be fine because it should give back a list, you know, this list here. Wonder if we can do something like this. Because it may need to, you know, when we look at the examples, let's try this out. Execute last. Positive score. Unknown field, positive score. Positive score. And we probably have a positive score in here somewhere. Okay, so that's working. Sweet. I skipped ahead a little bit in the debugging aspect of things. Okay, let me explain what we just did. So before we were deserializing into only a COVID-19 state and trying to force all of that JSON, which was a list of COVID-19 states, into one individual state. So I didn't know what to do with it. So now all I did was convert this into the actual state itself, or the list. We're now deserializing into the list of COVID-19 states, and then everything worked properly. So that was just the one piece that we were missing there. Next up is, it looks like we were able to get a little bit further when we look at the logs and do some debugging. So this has come up and saying like it does an unknown field positive state. It doesn't know what to do, or positive score. It doesn't know what to do with positive score as a field when you look through the debugging, because it's probably running through all of these different values that's in here. So we had state, we have positive, we can add in positive score, but it's trying to deserialize all of these values, and it is not finding some of them. So I think there's a way to get around this, but I can't remember right now. So one way is to just continuing to add to the class itself. So we can do like public, and it's basically looking at all of these different values here. So public integer positive score. I'm going to save that, and if we run this again, it's going to give us a different error. Negative score is in there. We can technically copy this, public integer negative score. Keep running through it until we get to the end. But what works out really well with this is to actually just make an entire class out of the JSON that we have. So there's some really cool tools that are out there that we can use to automatically make a class out of our JSON. So it'll take all of these values and convert them into a class, just like how we're creating, so we can easily get this done. So what that tool is called, I think it's called Apex to, or no, it's JSON to Apex. It's a Heroku app, and thanks for the creators. You can paste in your JSON. You can give it a name if you want. Let's just call this COVID state. And I'm going to create Apex. Got a little zip downloaded here. I open that up, and inside of it is a test class and a regular class of our, here, I'll just show you what it looks like. I don't want to. This is what it looks like. So it basically prints out, or it takes all the values inside of our JSON and automatically creates a class for us. So you can see there's state, positive, negative score, integers, and all of that great stuff. And then there are some object values, and most likely the object values are things that they didn't know what to do with. So it's probably null values in the actual JSON itself. And let's take a look at that, if there's any nulls. Yeah, pending, null. So, and then pending is an object. So we can literally just grab all of this and use it to use it as our code itself. Put this inside of our code, because it's exactly this state right here. I'm gonna copy and paste that in, and you can see that it actually gives us a parsing method, which works out really well for us to use. Let's see what's going on here. I am missing a end. Is it here? I'm missing a comma, or what's that? Curly brace. I think it's here actually. Save that. I don't know. This should be able to be, I'm missing it at the end. Did it either generate incorrectly or, either way we don't have to use their deserialization, or no, they want this to be an entire class by itself. I got it. So what they want to do is separate this whole thing out into another class, which is actually a bit cleaner and makes your code more modular. So we probably won't be able to save. I'm going to create another class, call it COVID state. Paste in all of this stuff here, save. Should be good. Missing this at the end again. There we go. And then now we can go back into here. I think we just need to save. Everything else should be fine. I'm waiting for the save to go through at the top. There we go. And we're doing our own strict deserialization. We could technically do something like this. Where we call our class name.parse. So it would be COVID state.parse, and then we add in, I think it's response get body. And then that'll convert it to a list automatically for us. And if we're following this through, it's input of a JSON string, it's doing the casting and the deserialization, literally everything we just did before, and it's returning a list of COVID states. So if we look back here, hit save, and now if we execute this, what we're trying to see all the way at the end is that it should print out state names for all of this. unsupported unsupported in JSON type object. It does not like those objects. Let's turn all of these into integers because they're most likely integers. All right, give it a whirl again. Okay, it went through there. Yeah, since those values are blank, it doesn't know what to do with them. We may put them as strings, but I'll just leave them as integers right now. Strings might be safer in the end. But as we see here, when we look through the debugger, we are starting to see state names come through. You know, this is what we had at the end, and that bug is still happening. Like, see? Over here where I'm scrolling down and it's going back up. Don't know what that is. I'm gonna have to figure that out later. Cool, but now we've been able to deserialize all of our JSON very quickly just by taking our existing message that we're getting. We're grabbing it, putting it through that free tool to convert it to an Apex class for us. We created a specific Apex class, and now we're able to use it. And all of this junk deserialize or casting and deserialization is going to go away, especially this junk too, because we're now able to call directly the class or the class variables. So we can do state. Oh, sorry. I want to type it out real quick to see if we can see all the properties. So now when we're setting our temp state name, if we do state object dot, let's see if it loads in. There we go. We can see all of the different property values that live inside of the COVID state class that we have up here. So if we want to get the name, I'm pretty sure it's state. And they're basically the same as the properties over here. And now I can start to just copy and paste, no casting required. Just clean this up. And originally, I was thinking of doing it this way originally, but I definitely want to show all of you the different ways of deserialization and when they're useful. So this is very useful if you have all of the values already, or your JSON message is going to be for the most part static. You can create a class like this and just use a deserialization, and it's very clean. If you don't know your values, what they're going to be, you can use the deserialize untype, which will definitely help you out in that aspect, and you're only grabbing what you think you need. All right, and then so now we're reaching this particular piece of I guess it's like a double deserialization, where we did the date modified. So instead of using the string here, I'm going to paste in this string, and is it a deletion here? Yeah, this is for the get. So let's paste this in here, double delete there, and then that should be good. Let's try to save that and see what happens. Getting some errors. $33. Oh, we got a double colon there. And then what's going on here? Temp state doesn't exist. I deleted something. I deleted too much. What did we have here before? Let me think. We probably had something like temp state equals the existing state, because these are COVID-19 records, right? Dot get, or no, it's probably this. State by name map, and then we're going to get the name of the state. right? Because we're passing in the name of the state. If it's not found, then it's null, and we're creating a new one. That makes sense? This is a COVID state. Cool. So in the end, let's test this with Alaska. AK is Alaska, right? State codes. AK. Oop. I want to make sure I got that right again. Yeah. It says postal code. I hope I'm saying that right. Yeah, that's Alaska. Alaska, AK, whatever. I'm just going to stick with Florida from now on. Anyways, so if we type in, like, just muff the data for some reason and hit save, so we know this one is wrong for AK. If we now go into our anonymous code and execute it, we should be seeing, if we refresh the data, the values get updated, so that's perfect. And then now if we look through the debugs, we can see everything that we had before, which is great. We have now modularized our code to work even better. And let's say we wanted to add a new value in. We don't have to do any weird type of casting and trying to figure out what the variable is. Let's take a look at this and see what we don't have yet. Because I want to show how easy it is to add in a value. I don't know, let's do positive score. Why not? Let's go to our record here. And positive score is an integer, which would mean it's going to be a number field. Paste that in. Positive score. Cool. I'm going to next through all of this here. Cool. And now if we wanted to add this value into our values to get updated, it's as simple as, since this already exists in our class, there's no weird type of casting we can do. We can probably I'll save that for a little bit. So I'm going to do temp state dot positive score equals state object dot positive score, because it already exists in here. That's perfect. Save. And if we had the schedule, the next time we'd run, this would update for everybody, but I'm just going to update it manually really quickly, do a big fat refresh. We should be seeing a new field on here. Positive score is now filled out with 1, and that's going to be on every state record. So that works out really well. Well, the value may not be 1 or whatever, but it's going to be, that value, the data is now refreshed for all of the records. Oops, somebody's moving in and out of my house. Cool. So I think that's it. Everything I wanted to go over in this video. Trying to think of what else we can get done quickly. I think for the last thing we want to do is just make sure to schedule our batch job. I'll start to look up in the end here how to separate those concerns. But on the admin side of things, or the configuration side, we're going to go to the Apex scheduler. We are going to name this nightly batch. Where is our scheduled class? What did we do? It's right here. Did I already schedule it? What did I do? I broke it. Let me do a quick save. I'm fairly certain we stopped it from being scheduled. There we go. Let's call this nightly jobs. Let's run this every day until the dawn of time. Wonder if this is going to be still running after I kick the bucket. Cool. So now we have that scheduled. The next time I log in, we should see a new data in here. And then all we'll have to do is come in and refresh our reports that we have in here. So we can even see if I refresh here, these numbers are going to change. We're up to like 1 million people have tested positive, which is kind of scary. But look at that number of maybe the number of people recovered. This looks high. I'm going to have to. 1 million people in the US tested positive. I'm going to have to look that up, figure that one out myself. Test results positive. There's 300K here. Maybe. Anyways, that's it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to leave comments down below of what you would like to see next in this COVID-19 code and project that I've been working on. There's definitely lots of room for improvement, and there are other code APIs that we can join together with this data to make it a lot more flexible and start to collate different sources. So that's really interesting, and whatever you guys want to see, I will do. So in the end, all you guys really need to do is ask, and we can take this wherever you want to go with it. So I'm Walters954. Thanks so much for watching, and remember, I believe in you.